All right, go for it.
Good morning, everyone. It's V the Guerrilla Economist coming to you live with my main man CJ, and we're bringing you all the news and views and all the information important to you. Check us out, roguemoney.net. Follow us on Twitter at the Rogue Money and Rogue Money on Facebook, DTube, Steam, every single podcasting app known to humanity. And guys, we have a special treat for you this morning. Winter is starting to thaw a little bit early in some places, and once again, the bear himself has come out of hibernation. James, the Russian analyst. James, what's up, buddy?
How you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear.
Excellent. Yeah, good morning, gentlemen. It's been a while. It's been many months since I've been on. I wanted to take the opportunity to jump on this morning just because I was roused from hibernation by the hearings yesterday on Capitol Hill about
Yeah.
Russia and the awesome Russian hacking, disinfo, trolls, bots, and useful idiots and dupes threat, as well as the fake news that's circulating now, not just through the fringe media of Lawrence Tribe, the Harvard law professor, but also apparently Bloomberg and Reuters, and
Yeah.
it's just all over the place that one U.S. airstrike in Deir ez-Zor region of Syria killed 20 bazillion former Spetsnaz guys. So I just
Yes,
wanted to
that's
jump on
not
board to
on.
commentate on that. I heard that we discussed it yesterday on the show, and thought I'd give my 2 cents as well.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Well, I think first of all, there is a slight kernel of truth to the whole thing that they've blown completely into the stratosphere, and that is that there is a Russian Foreign Legion, if you will, that operates parallel to the Russian military. In the Donbass, they call it the Northern Wind, which is the guys who operate the
Yeah.
Vontorg, which is the so-called army surplus store. That is all the Soviet era equipment that the Donbass guys were getting from across the border. But the Northern Wind basically are the guys who are recruited at the equivalent of a Russian VFW hall. You know, they're the Afghan veterans or the Chechnya veterans,
A bunch of old
guys that
dudes.
are now. Yeah, they're old dudes. They're all in their 40s and early 50s by now. You know, they've been around. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's kind of as Scott, the editor of the Sakers blog, Vineyard of the Saker blog, said on quipped on her blog post about the Wagner thing. You know, it's basically like the military's claiming that a bunch of 40-something, 50-year-old guys defeated ISIS. Well, in reality, basically, these guys do exist, but there's definitely no private military contractor company known as Wagner. Sorry to disappoint people. Named after the German composer Richard Wagner, which is an interesting touch for propaganda purposes. It doesn't exist. Russian journalists did an investigation on it, and they realized it was just a huge, elaborate psyops hoax that's most likely being run out of a small country in the southeastern Mediterranean that does not lack Russian-speaking military personnel of former Soviet Union extraction.
Right. Exactly.
So that's the long and short of it. You know, you can go to Scott's Humor on Twitter. She's got the breakdown of it. SCOTTSHUMOR. She's a Russian living. Did I call her she? A he.
Yeah, you call her she sometimes.
Yeah, I called Scott a she. I shouldn't have done that. Anyway, sorry, Scott. But I didn't blow your entire cover. You know, you're still Scott to everyone. So, and you're somewhere in the States, as far as I could tell, when we talked on the phone. So one time. Anyway.
Yeah, maybe that whole entire thing made no sense, and plus
And plus, the numbers just
it's
kept
against the
growing. Like,
law.
first, it was 4 or 5 guys, you know, who got killed, and that they managed to find some VKontakte. This is the Russian version of Facebook for those in the audience who don't know. Profiles, which is basically what a lot of these trolls sitting in Kiev or some part of Ukraine get paid to do, is they just basically
Right.
trawl through Russian social media all day looking for people who look like ex-military or have some kind of you know, military interest, including historical reenactors, people, you know, who play Germans, you know, in World War II and fighting, you know, reenacting battles like for Stalingrad or something like that. And they and Napoleonic Wars even, and they find these guys and they basically take their profiles and then they just start photoshopping and making stuff up. But
Right.
obviously, you know, the most spectacular giveaway of the fake, besides the wildly varying numbers that just kept growing and growing and growing until an entire, you know, half a division was wiped out in one airstrike, was the fact that they used the video. Did you guys see they used the video from Mars? Some
What?
of the the Mars rover footage.
No, I didn't see
No.
that.
They photoshopped burned out tanks into Mars rover footage to make it look like the Deir Zor Desert. These are not like high grade fakes by any means, guys. We're not dealing with 120 IQ people here.
Yeah.
As far as industrial light and magic fake standards of fakes.
Oh God.
So, Rogue Money, Team Rogue Money, doing our best to debunk the fake news every day.
Yeah, I mean,
Or as the Russians call it, fake news.
Yeah, exactly. It was totally fake, man. And yesterday I was like going into it, breaking it down and whatnot, and off the bat, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And thanks for filling it in, especially that article from Scott's Humor that you forwarded to me via email. Scott's Humor, if you just Google it, Blogspot will come out, and you'll learn about Wagner. Wagner's basically an Israeli intelligence construct. It doesn't exist, and you'll see how that ties into the events of the prior days where this
with
whole
the F-16I
event
getting shot down, and some people being pretty PO'd about that in Israel.
Yeah, because it makes them look bad, man.
Book Sam, by the way, it was a Book. They said it was an S-200, but the S-200 is designed to take down, Mach 3 B-58 Hustler bombers or whatever it was back in the 60s.
Right.
It's a huge missile, but it's not very maneuverable. It's designed more to take down bombers, nuclear capable bombers, than to go after the smaller fighter jets. So that was definitely a Book M1 that was shipped to Syria since 2011, most likely upgraded in the last year.
Yeah. There you go. That explains it, man. So what else is going on with these Russia hearings, James?
Well, there was a big hearing on Capitol Hill yesterday with Dan Coates, the former Indiana senator, U.S. senator who represents CJ's Hoosier State. He was there talking about how
he's a shill,
still meddling in our elections, and they're already making big preparations to meddle in the 2018 elections. Exactly what that entails, other than something bots, trolls, the usual stuff, propaganda, they didn't really say. And that's kind of the giveaway that, again, we're being conned.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Can you break that down for us a little further?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of beyond, I mostly covered Coates' testimony, but there was also the big soundbite that one of the Democratic senators, I think from Rhode Island or I'm not sure which one, he asked the intel chiefs if Trump had given them specific instructions on how to counteract Russian meddling again in our electoral process, and they answered no. And this is supposed to be something, shocking, that Trump expects them to be able to do their jobs, if that is indeed their job, which I think it is. But if this meddling were real and it actually existed, but beyond that, the big NBC story last week was trying to lay some of the groundwork for this hearing today, where they leaked that DHS had tracked all the Russian hacking of the voting systems, even if they didn't have evidence of tampering. Well, the state of Texas, among others, said that was bunk. They had no evidence of a breach of their electoral systems, their database. And in any case, it would be impossible to completely alter an election result just from getting into that system, because it's just a tabulation system of all the different counties anyway. So there's a layer of redundancy built into it.
Yeah. I watched about an hour of the Intel briefings, and the majority of it was just absolutely appalling. The fear mongering that was taking place, and James, I don't think that there was like one country that we didn't state was an enemy or had something out against us, right? I mean, it was just ridiculous.
Yeah, Chris Wray, the FBI director, started talking about China and the threat of Chinese students, or which is nothing new. I mean, yes, it is true. I'm not here to blow smoke up anybody's butt. The CSS, the Chinese State Security Services, they do use students. They particularly, maybe young, attractive female Chinese students, but it's not like every single Chinese student is a spy either.
Yeah, my two takeaways, like the overtones from it, were: one, they made every attempt to make the administration look unprepared, unorganized to counter this perceived cyber event, these cyber attacks. They made every attempt to get the admirals, the intels to state that there wasn't a plan, and some of them bought into it a little bit. Some came to the defense. So that was one of my biggest takeaways, was that attempt. And the second one was exactly right. What you keep stating is that we're hearing this overtone consistently that they are willing and prepared to bring the election system under some type of national program. Hence the ability to alter the outcomes of all elections going forward. So I think they want to bring in the state elections under the Department of Homeland Security, federalize it, and really be able to dictate so that they don't end up with a disruptive event like Donald J. Trump ever again. So that's what their goal is.
Absolutely. V?
Yeah, absolutely right, man. And, my whole take is, they're doing a miserable job of trying to foment chaos. Every step of the move that they're making, every turn of the spade that they try to do in order to create some sort of destabilization has backfired on them, has been exposed for what they truly are. No one's buying their BS anymore. That's the best part of this whole entire thing, James.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I see the freak out all over the place, and even some of these, these guys. I'll name a name: Andrew Aaron Weisbird, who's a real scumbag. He used to run the Internet Haganah site, basically harassing pro-Palestinian activists and basically labeling anybody, even if they were just a run-of-the-mill pro-Palestinian person. I'm not taking a side in that conflict, but basically his job was to harass people who were campus activists and try to get them all branded terrorists, which is really ironic considering that the enthusiasm the guy developed for real actual head chopping Al-Qaeda terrorists in Syria, who just because they happen to be fighting Assad later on down the line. But that's because he's putting the interests of another power over those of the United States of America. So basically you have these people with the Hamilton 68 project, which is funded by the German Marshall Fund, and it has, among other people, Max Blumenthal, Alternate. A lot of people have done some decent reporting on it. I don't hold Max Blumenthal's dad, Sid Vicious Blumenthal, the former Clinton crony, against him. People don't get to choose their parents, but in any case, he's done some really good reporting on these groups and these neocon organizations. They're basically PNAC reconstituted. It's just, a few different faces. It's still the same core group of William Crystal and those guys, but you also have Mike Morrell, the deputy CIA director, and former crony of John Brennan, who's in the news in a blog post, on our site today. From the excellent Executive Intelligence Review crew, EIR, and LaRouche PAC, our friend Harley Schlanger, covering the perjury investigation against Brennan, that he lied to the Congress in his testimony about the Steele dossier, how it was developed, who he referred it to, what he did to handle it, and the notion that he just basically handed it off to the FBI to look into was not accurate at all.
One other real quick point before we shift gears a little bit is regarding Dan Coates from Indiana, who is the director of national intelligence. I'm very familiar with Dan Coates' history. Dan Coates was
getting up there in age.
Was one of those dinosaur senators from Indiana that was up there for numerous years. He left for the course of about 8 years, I believe 8, became a huge paid lobbyist in Washington, D.C. And this is facts, okay? This is facts. I'm speaking facts here. And truly, I don't know who advised Trump to bring Dan Coates inside as the national intelligence director, but the guy's a joke. He has no business being in that type of position. Now, in saying that, interesting enough, he did discuss one important dire threat, and I have the article brought up for our fans that are watching, and that's the fact that he specifically states, and no one asked about it, of course, on the Hill, stated in his closing comments that one additional threat, quote unquote, one additional threat, this one internal and somewhat personal, Coates told Congress as he finished reading his opening statement, is that his concern is over the federal spending. And the federal spending is threatening our ability to properly defend our nation, both in the short term and especially in the long term. And I think what he's specifically talking about is our national debt. And again, we domestically, we know what's going on with the debt. Spend money like crazy, but internationally that could be playing out. So at least he did speak one moment of truth regarding concern. But that's just my takeaway on Mr. Coates.
Yeah, 15% defense hike and defense, I should say, offense, and $1 trillion deficit this year, gentlemen.
Yeah, nothing like that, man. You gotta somehow get
just
these
like under
ship
Barry
going.
in 2009 and 2010, but now it's Trump's deficit.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. Well, the whole thing is that it's. I think the whole thing right now is, look, we're all staring down the end of the barrel. I've said this weeks ago. I said that the Chinese, the yuan, the petro yuan gold standard is actually launching sometime, mid to late March. That's what my sources in Hong Kong told me, and boom, it's been reported by Bloomberg that's exactly what's happening. They're looking at a March 26th date for the potential launch of this whole entire thing. So we're all on borrowed time. We've been given a reprieve with the Trump election and the Trump team, but we all know that even though infrastructure wise, we could, this will help the infrastructure and create some shovel ready jobs. We know that the bad guys are being taken out. But at the end of the day, we also know
it doesn't matter anymore because
exactly
it doesn't matter what the debt is because it's all going to be inflated away anyway.
Exactly correct. You hit the nail on the head. It doesn't matter what the debt is going to be because we're heading for an economic reset. It's going to happen. It was supposed to happen back in 2013 or 14 it was. And then the U.S. decided, the deep state decided to go ahead and start a war in the Ukraine, So that's the whole thing, man. We have a date with destiny. This is going to happen, and whatever we need to get a physical economy built up as fast as possible, the better we are going to be when this whole thing gets reset.
Yep.
Hey V, I brought up the $1 trillion asset manager in regards to the real financial time bomb, and that's the public pensions. You want to jump into that discussion?
Yeah, absolutely, man. One of the things is, and I see how many times have we pulled articles, how many times I've been talking about this. I've spoken, to public pension funds before, and they have some of the most, first of all, depending on what state they're in, they have the most unrealistic expectations. Even those that are running the funds, they literally gulp, they literally swallow hard when the performance is based on 7 to 8%. Okay, and all these funds, you can count on one hand how many pension funds in the United States is actually funded 100% or more. You can count on one hand.
Maybe the University of Texas one because of the oil fields in the West Texas. That's about it, as far as I know.
Yeah, and all the other funds are bankrupt. I mean, look at Ohio. You had companies. You had a company that was connected with Bernie Madoff, decides to go ahead and run Ohio's pension fund, thanks to John Kasich. Okay, because he's always eating pancakes. So Kasich allows this fund to come in and come in and run this fund, this firm. They take Ohio's $1.4 billion pension fund and decimate it to negative $300 million, all the while collecting $750 million in fees along the way. And every single fund manager, here's the funny part, every single state controller, the ones that I've spoken to, the ones who are in charge of the funds here and there, their answers, when me and my business partner sit across from them and we ask them, so what are your fees? What kind of fees are you paying? They look at us, we're paying 1%, maybe 2%. Then we diagnose their entire statement. We take months and months and months of their data, of their paperwork, of their fund. We calculate everything that's happening. I'm like, you're being reamed for 15% in fees. What are you talking about? This is what's happening all throughout the country. It's the craziest thing in the world. The American worker is going to wake up, and I'm telling you, when they wake up and they find out these a-holes have squandered their future. Ooh, man, I hate to be one of those fund members. I would hate to be one of those city council members who've allowed the shenanigans to happen.
And they're not even going to be able to, drive Ubers to keep themselves from eating cat food in their old age because the cars are going to be self-driving, supposedly, by that time.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's really going to happen. I think we're going to have a surplus of drivers, and it's going to get pretty cheap to take an Uber.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man, 1,000%. It's going to be it's going to be crazy without a doubt. What else we got lined up, Siege?
Hey guys, let's talk. I'm sorry. Did you hear the story? Just a one slight Russia-related tangent. Did you hear the story about that was in the Boston Globe several days ago, almost a couple weeks ago, about how they imported Russian liquefied natural gas in the U.S. Northeast this winter?
Yeah, I did see that
for the Yamal Peninsula project. Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Despite
basically, the U.S. is shipping liquefied natural gas from the United States from Cheniere Energy, I believe it is. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, in Louisiana, and they ship it over to a terminal in northern Poland on the Baltic Sea, and then there's another one in Lithuania, I think, across the Baltic. And it costs something like twice the rate of the Russian gas, with the discounts they're getting that they've been able to get in the last few years with the weaker oil market. And meanwhile, the Russians are shipping Yamal gas over to the U.S. and U.K. with the Chinese investing in the nuclear-powered icebreakers that are going to take it across the Arctic Silk Road back around the other way over the top of Asia.
Well, we're still leading the world in the exportation of trash, recyclables, and pornography, James. So that's a good thing.
That's right. The Make America Horny Again tour is going on. That's what I heard. Since we're not on FM AM radio, I can say that.
Yeah.
We're not on terrestrial yet, boys.
You need to create a meme on that one, James.
Then we'll have to not use that word, I guess. I don't know if that's one of the George Carlin words you can't say on the radio. Maybe not.
Hey, V, while James is with us, I think we need to get a better understanding of exactly, what is going on with Benjamin Netanyahu and his recent strikes, the turmoil that he's facing, right now in Israel. I mean, what in the world is going on, guys?
Well, we got Netanyahu who should be arrested and taken behind a tool shed, but that's my opinion of the guy. But Russian President
definitely a tool.
Definitely such a tool. What a lackey. What a scumbag. It's terrible. Terrible. Russian President Vladimir
basically
Putin
built a political career off the reputation of his dead brother, who was a war hero. Supposedly. Yeah.
Supposedly.
So
the whole thing with the Russian President Vladimir Putin put an end to the confrontation between Israel and Iran and Syria, and both sides accepted his decision on Saturday afternoon after the second wave of bombardments by the Al-Nusra Air Force, aka the Israeli Air Force, against the Syrian targets and Iranian installations in Syria. I mean, what gives these people the right to do this? It's beyond me. In Syria, senior Israeli officials were still taking a militant line, and it seemed as if Jerusalem was considering further military action. Discussion at Jerusalem, was in Tel Aviv. A discussion of that ended not long after a phone call between Putin and Prime Minister Netanyahu. What's your take on that, James?
Well, they claim that they took out half this entire Syrian air defense in one afternoon. I take that with a real grain of salt, gentlemen. I mean, that's
I'll take that with a giant. That's
a hell of a rate. Even allowing for the better, intelligence that I think the Israelis have pretty good intelligence, at least geospatially, and probably quite a few people that are on their payroll among the so-called Syrian opposition. But as far as the that success rate goes, I don't think so. No, they're moving these SAMs around pretty much every day, all the time. There are certain perhaps prepped launch pads for the bigger ones. The S-200 is not as easy to move around as, say, a Pantsir system, which can be folded up and moved and trucked out in 15 minutes or less.
Right.
I've even seen videos where they disassemble it in 5 minutes, like literally.
Wow.
It's ready to scoot and shoot, basically, and that's what it's designed for. And that's what got the F-16I pilots, is that they were operating with F-15s providing their ECM coverage. And the F-15s were basically watching the big S-200s coming at them at high speed, and they didn't see the books coming up at them till too late, because the books were switched on at the last minute and then blasted the F-16 out of the sky as it was probably punching burner coming back from the direction of Palmyra and southern desert of Syria. And what I think happened is that basically, and the reason you see Bibi so deferential to Vlad is that the those systems in Khmeimim in the Russian airbase there were providing data links to the book, and that's why the F-16 got nailed. And you didn't see that happen before, because the Russians had enough after the the U.S. incident. They wanted to send a message, and as Elijah J. Magnier, who's pretty much the best reporter covering Syria and Lebanon right now, the Hezbollah beat, he's writing a book about Hezbollah. If you look him up, you can also find him on Twitter, Elijah J. Magnier, and his book, he's crowdfunding it at the moment. So if you're interested in that topic, if you're Lebanese.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people need to understand what Hezbollah is all about.
hit his tip jar, so you understand, you may hate him, you love him, hate him, you don't like him, that's fine. But
what's his name? Elijah
understand what this group, why they're the most successful paramilitary political party in the world. So
exactly. What's his name? Elijah what?
Elijah J. Magnier. I think he's from French origin.
Got it.
A lot of folks in Syria still speak, in Lebanon still speak fluent French, like Assad's wife Asma. So,
he does interviews. This guy, see, you got to get him.
Yeah, definitely. I'll get working on it.
He did an interview with Morris 108, some guy in Southeast Asia the other day. So I'm pretty sure he'd be willing to come on our show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at his GoFundMe right now. Writing my book, Hezbollah, the Unlikely Peacemakers, from Domestic Resistance to Regional Army. Yeah, this is a great book I'd actually read.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic in terms of why Israel does not want a piece of that again after what the beating they took in 2006. And you keep seeing all the drum beating, and you see all the chest thumping, and we took out this, we took out that, and we're killing bazillions of Russians, and we're getting away with it. And Iranians, don't buy it, folks. Okay, don't buy it.
I mean, it's people don't realize also is that the IDF is probably the most ninny military force out there. They're not that hard-edged force that they used to be. They're really not.
You would probably have some elite units like this.
You do have Salam Goriat and
southern Lebanon. They had to get out. I mean, it was pretty bad for them. They walked into a few ambushes and took heavy losses, and they left. So it's not what it was in terms of military aptitude by any means. I mean, whether it's SJWization or the large number of women in the force or whatever.
It is the whole country.
The whole country,
dude,
it's
the whole country is run by feminists. Do you understand? Israeli men are terrified of the women. The women are just out of control. They yell false rape charges. There's a whole. If you go on YouTube, in fact, it was RT that did this years ago. You go on YouTube, and what you would do is this: just type in RT feminist Israel. Just type that into the YouTube thing. You'll see a documentary on Israel, what a typical Israeli man have to deal with. And that's why most Israeli men, they don't want to wind up with Israeli women. It's a nightmare.
A lot of them are in Southeast Asia. That is true. A lot of them, after they finish their IDF service, go straight to Thailand.
Yep. They have nothing. They have nothing to do with the Israeli women whatsoever because they are out of control. And I mean, like, for instance, like, some guy in, if one person doesn't like, it's just terrible. It's just ninnying. Like, you have, like, if you have military orders, military issues, you have, family members.
Well, also, you can't maintain an ultra modern, you can't maintain a fighting edge if you're fighting, stone throwing kids and, just the occasional guy with an AK and a suicide bomb belt. That's just not. I mean, it does grind people down after a while, to just do the same old stuff, SOS every day, and
exactly
see the same faces, the same checkpoints. And I'm not blaming the individual Israeli soldier for the stupid policy or the whole occupation thing. I'm just saying that, and I'm not saying all Israelis are bad. Again, you guys are anti-Semitic. No, we're not. We're not about that. He's in New York, I mean, I grew up in a pretty let's just say I knew a lot of Jewish people growing up too, and some
a good buddy of mine is
evangelicals. Buckle the Bible belt.
Yeah.
And I knew all about Christian Zionism before I rejected it as a modern heresy essentially.
It was a heresy. It's a total heresy.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the church fathers or biblical Christianity.
And Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism. And two different things, man.
Not Judaism as it existed for about 2,000 years and even before that in the diaspora of the
You have Jews here in New York that protest Zionism all the time. You have Orthodox Jews here in New York. They protest Zionism all the time. I mean, there's certain things that certain social or psychological controllers are able to get away with here in the United States. When I tell the average American, hey, man, there's about 50,000 Jews that live in Tehran, Iran, and they've been there for thousands of years. Their mind is blown.
Yeah. Or that Iran
why
has
don't they? Are they being held against their will? Are they in prison camps? No, they're actually vibrant members in society. They actually have governmental positions.
Or tell them that some of the oldest Armenian churches in the world are inside Iran's borders.
Yep.
In northern Iran. Yes.
Exactly. Or what during even the Armenian genocide, where a lot of Armenians escaped Turkish slaughter by heading over to Iran.
Yes.
You tell most people, they're like, what? They're I mean, can we get out of this? It's like the American citizen needs to be. I mean, a crash course is not. They need to be deluged and brought up to speed with how the world really works and what's really going on. These stupid axiomatic platitudes that these media people and politicians blow out. They hate us because of our freedoms. No, they hate you because your foreign policy sucks.
And and you're ignorant. And you know what? The other thing is, it's funny because it's just like we talk about birds of prey with two wings of the same bird of prey, where essentially all this crap in Syria, it's been enabled by the fact all these games we're playing, and that's really all they are. They're just spoiler games because the war's already been won. It's just it's like it's like Hitler. I don't want to compare. Okay, I just went there anyway. It's like Hitler had this Ardennes offensive or whatever. Did it matter in the end of the Hill of Beans? No. It just led to a lot more, made it a lot easier to kill Germans west of the West Wall, of the Rhine than east of it, know? But it's just like, they're just, these are spoiler actions. These are rear guard actions. The jihadis are basically surrounded in Idlib. Turkey's playing some spoiler games. Erdogan's trying to make up his mind. Is he going to let the deal Idlib for the Kurdish areas, and that's not happening because the Kurds are killing his guys, and the Turkish military seems pretty inept. They're trying to make these jihadis do most of the fighting, and a lot of these jihadis, I'm sorry, but they're 85, IQ cousin marriage products who don't really know what the hell they're doing, and that's why one of the reasons there is a war in Syria is that you had a lot of people in those rural areas. You had this huge rural-urban divide, sociological divide, where essentially, urban Damascus and Aleppo and, Latakia were basically European, like Lebanon, aspiring to European norms and standards. And then you had, people that, or at least were being indoctrinated by the Muslim Brotherhood and the Wahhabis to do that. So in any case, it's just a huge, there are still some big battles ahead for Idlib, no doubt about it. And the Turks are going to have to keep taking their licks until they have enough. But beyond that, there's really not much the U.S. and Israel can do unless they're ready to lose men. I mean, right now we're in this chest thumping mode. Oh, look, we bombed the Syrian tank, the T-72 tank, and you notice in all the headlines, guys, it was a Russian tank. It was called a Russian tank, or a Soviet tank. It's not called a Syrian tank. Anyway. The point is,
it's an old T-72, man. I mean, but
who knows? Who the hell knows? Maybe they just got it from the rebels or from the SDF and they blew it up.
Exactly.
Show. I mean, we
don't
know if the Syrian guy was inside of it.
You want to know something else? Is they never talk about or show the pictures of the American M1A2s that are going up like Roman candles.
No, not in Saudi.
In Yemen. Yeah, you there?
Yeah, I think he accidentally muted himself.
James, unmute yourself.
He got so excited, I think.
He's gotten too excited.
Yeah.
James, unmute yourself. He's still talking.
Okay, he probably is.
But anyway,
James,
we should move on, gentlemen. I mean, we've pretty much covered the foreign policy gamut, I think, for today.
Sure. Real quick here, Ed. Want to cover a lawsuit. I think Jeff Sessions has finally met his match today. Reefer Madness, Jeff Sessions, absolutely. And the reason why this is important, I mean, let's face it, this most recent budget that came out that was recently passed, and I don't have the exact figure, but I think it was in the tunes of billions of dollars that the federal government's going to be pumping out for the country's opioid crisis that's occurring and the heroin addiction and everything. We have an attorney general that's so disconnected that he's stating that, cannabis, marijuana usage leads to opioid addiction. And, when it's proven fact in states like California, Colorado, that it's actually reducing not only usage of these dangerous narcotics, but also reducing the deaths that's occurring. So a brave 12-year-old girl, Alexis Bortel, is joining in a lawsuit today and this actually has some tractions. Obviously, I think that the big government will win, but this is the first time that someone has actually, utilized some of the Constitution in terms of commerce. And a former football player, specifically states that. Now, we've known about that in the cannabis industry as far as the commerce, as far as what it states specifically in the Constitution, the violations that occur there. But this 12-year-old girl has some very valid cases in regards to, she has epilepsy, severe epilepsy, and she uses cannabis to help her treatment. And the fact that she is restricted on travel, restricted on being able to go from state to state, for the utilization. So we support Alexis. So Alexis, good luck in court today against AG Jeff Sessions. We hope you win.
Absolutely right, man. Because Reefer Madness Jeff Sessions is just what kind of insight? I mean, what kind of foresight did this guy have to do this? That and between that and the civil asset forfeiture, it's Sessions just rubs me the wrong way. He really does.
Well, he buys into that entire, what the 60s narrative in regards to, how they started using cannabis to label the hippies, the black community, the slang. That's how marijuana got its slang, look, the slaves are getting high and everything. So we need to call it a controlled substance. And so he buys into that mentality, but just very outdated. I mean, last I looked, I think national statistics for medicinal cannabis are 65% plus approval for it, and just his thoughts are old school, and he really needs to get out of the way because it's these states are proven for a fact that it can help with the opioid crisis that's happening in our country, but here we're gonna spend billions of dollars. We're creating these safe use areas, right, for needles where people can go get doped up and do it without the risk of getting in trouble, and the amount of money the municipalities. What's that drug that they use to revive them when they OD on the fentanyl and everything? What's that one drug called? That they basically. What is it? Yeah, I think you just said it.
Narcan.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember. No, I can't. I got it wrong.
Yeah, whatever it is. But
I hope we can see some U.S.-Russia, convergence on sane marijuana laws, because Russia is pretty harsh on it. Very, very harsh drug laws. It's kind of a legacy of the Soviet era when, I think they were worried about the CIA flooding them with narcotics, which actually happened starting with the 80s Afghan war. But it's we've already seen some convergence with Russians and Americans on guns, which of course has all the pinko, Cold War II waging, hardcore lefties pissed off, that the NRA had some contacts in Russia. Oh my God, that's how Putin was infiltrating the Republican Party. Well, not really, but Russians, Americans are pretty fascinated with Russian guns and vice versa. And I think we can see some progress on drug laws too, hopefully in the next decade or so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, what else we got, Siege?
Well, I think that about wraps it up. I'm looking through the list here real quick. We have the. If you want to talk about the Iceland and the crypto mining that's occurring there,
we'll save that for another time.
You'll save that for another time. Okay. Yeah. So that's about it. So, quick update regarding Julian Assange, which is just absolutely ridiculous. But yesterday he was in court, basically to overturn his conviction for violating his parole, even though the case against him was dropped, that entire assault, rape allegation, everything that occurred there. Even though that entire investigation has been dropped, this judge still refused to drop the conviction against him, because of that. Again, even though that the Swedish prosecutors have dropped the investigation. So unfortunately, it was not a good day in court for Julian Assange.
Somebody just wanted to make a liar out of QAnon. That's all. Then Assange is sitting free in Switzerland somewhere already, and they just wanted to contradict QAnon. That's my theory. Somebody told the judge, "Hey, we got to make QAnon look stupid, so let's Assange is not free."
Interesting. With that being said, we are over now. We got Hump Day coming up at 1 p.m., so stay tuned for that, folks. And with that being said, James, why don't you say your closing comments, man?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys for having me on the show, and hopefully, I'll be on the show more frequently this spring, and as things warm up, and hopefully we won't have more geopolitical blowups with Russia, but I'm sure that the Russia hysteria will go on and on, no matter what. So
absolutely, good deal. And with that being said, we're over and out. Take it away, CJ.